Okay, welcome to episode 2 of the Schlockcast. I made that up. Thank you.
I like that.
Yeah, I was quite pleased with it. The
Yeah,
series
it's
of
clever.
interviews by me that focus on some of the creative types involved in the first issue of Spacewarp. I've described myself as the creepy voice in the darkness, the mutant in the machinery. I'm joined this week by literally the poshest bloke I know in America since Quentin Crisp popped his clogs. Yes.
Well, yeah, there wasn't.
Cumber. Cliff, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, thank you. Good. I was going to say if there's a natural successor to Quentin Crisp, I'll take it. Yes, my dear. Yes, lovely. Cup of tea.
Naked Civil Servant, was that the name of his movie?
That's him. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
We were discussing John Hurt a little bit before in another role and capacity, but that wasn't that John Hurt played him?
Yes,
yeah.
It was. Yes.
Yes. Lovely. Lovely.
So we're here to talk about Spacewarp, Clifford. You and I have a history. Let's call it that. We have a creative history, at least, don't we?
Yeah.
So
for those that creative sometimes, yes.
So I knew you'd do this. So let's talk about your road to Spacewarp, shall we?
Yeah.
How did it all come back? So you kind of fell back into comics art again, didn't you? After a while, is that right?
Well, yeah. So it's phone's ringing. Yeah. That's great. Just interruption. That's Pat. Shut up, Pat. Be quiet. So he's got a hotline into the Cumber residence, the Cumber mansion. So So I've always been a comics fan. I've always been a huge 2000 AD fan. I still have boxes of my original 2000 AD, like the first 1,000 progs or something downstairs. And so it's been an enormous influence on my life. But I always wanted to be a comic book artist. It's always been on my bucket list to do comic book art. You know, I went to art college and everything else with pretensions of maybe doing something else. But
it's always been art college, if you don't mind me interrupting.
Amersham.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I did a BTEC in art and design back in the day when it was Amersham College of Art. I believe it's renamed now, but it used to have like a large part of it was an art school. So
I think it's the Sarah Harris School of Art now. I think is the name of it.
Is it really where the Great Dane Trainery?
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I'm glad they renamed it after somebody worthwhile. So anyway, so I did that. I always wanted to get back into comic art, and then sort of put it on pause to, this is back in 88, 87, something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Just never really managed to pursue it. Got involved in other things, ended up going back to university and, which is where I met my wife and had a family. Then, of course, all these things that you focus. So, I would still draw, I would still doodle, I would still do all that sort of stuff. But it wasn't until 3 or 4 years ago that I really had the time and resources to get back into it. So it was sort of, I spent a little time away, and over those sort of 2 or 3 years, I've really been embraced by the independent comics community, thanks in part to a little podcast you might have heard of, called the Awesome Comics Podcast, after I did some fan art and stuff. And and you guys were just like, well, why aren't you actually doing anything for anybody?
I think you're those. We occasionally see them. You're one of those artists who sort of pops up. I mean, I don't mean any hyperbole in this. You are the Frank Quietly of the small press scene. That's who I put you in that sort of shelf with, I suppose. And we're all like, why is he not doing comics? Because some weird bloke completely took advantage of you and paid you a minuscule amount for some pages, and then he got some terrible person.
You should see what he had me draw. Oh my God. I still can't think about it.
and then after just a few things you did, really, we were surprised how professional your art looks, man. It's a very developed style. But then did Pat reach out to you, or Lisa reach out to you via Twitter, was it, I think?
So, so I was, I'm on the Instagrams a little bit, and I post some art there, and I know Lisa followed me, and I think Pat ended up following me on Twitter, and and he's left some really nice comments on some stuff that I've drawn.
Yeah.
I know.
It was the first time we did it. You sent me a picture of a man doing a dance.
Yeah. Oh my God. So okay, all right, okay. So I have to get this out of the way because this is the gushing portion of the interview. So if there's anybody who has specifically perhaps had a huge influence on all of the things that I love about comics,
right?
It's just about everything that's ever been created by Pat Mills.
Nice.
Like I said, I was a huge 2000 AD fan. Back in the days of when it was black and white and on newsprint, and it was those guttural black and white drawings from some of the best talent. That's him again. He's like, shut up.
He's heard you. Yeah.
He's heard me again. Some of those guttural black and white drawings that were in there just were hugely influential on my style. I mean, I know you and your last podcast, you were talking about great British artists.
Yeah.
And that was a great one to listen to because it was like everyone that you had named was sort of influential on my own art style. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the black and white art. And so getting a follow from Pat Mills was just huge to me. And then, he reached out and through Twitter sent me a DM and asked me if I would do a little something for Spacewarp. And if you are familiar at all with some of the people who are involved with Spacewarp, and I'm not talking about you, Tony, but people who might be watching, see these artists, it's like a resurgence of those great times back through, the late 70s and 80s where I was reading 2000.
I definitely feel that. Yeah.
There's just this resonant, but it's not like a nostalgic, this sort of cloying, sentimental kind of mockery of something. It really has that visceral early 2000 AD feel to it.
Yeah, definitely. There's a little bit of the punk. There's a little bit of the transgressive, but there's the storytelling. We're not pandering to anyone in that book, are we? It's just cracking storytelling. Yeah, I agree.
It really is, and the ideas are just kind of mental and so good. And it's Pat's writing has always been a little bit of that transgressive, a little bit incredibly original stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I just honestly, when he sent me a note, I went back and was rereading Nemesis the Warlock, which has been a perennial favorite of mine. I think groundbreaking storytelling and work. And
I can see a bit of the O'Neill in your work, actually, man. I'll be honest.
Yeah, there might be. He's hugely influential, and he's one of those artists who I've appreciated more as I've got older. Just the skill that he brings to the table and the originality that he brought to the drawing. But martial law and all of these kind of incredible stories that Pat has turned out. And here I am, and I'm working for one of the people who I most respect and admire in the industry for what he's done.
Did you play it cool though? Did you say, well, obviously I'd want a few quid, my friend? Did you do a bit of that? Did you?
Well, fortunately, because
I can fit in my schedule, buddy. Did you do a bit of that?
You can't hear the screaming on Twitter. So fortunately, it wasn't a video call. So after the crying and everything else, because I never imagined I'd ever be working in comics. I honestly thought I wasn't good enough. I'm not good enough. I think a lot of people have that.
Then, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, I know. And people tell you, and you think they're lying because they just, But so the idea of working for somebody like Pat Mills and Pat Mills being like, oh, I quite like. Or we could do the Pat Mills way. Well, yes, I quite like your art. And. I mean,
the thing is what we both admire. I mean, he's a friend of ours. But the thing we both admire about Pat and about Lisa actually is their honesty. They're not going to lie to you about stuff. So let's move it along a little bit. So he sent you through. You had a sort of backwards and forwards, and he sent you through a script. Now, I'm right in thinking that this is kind of a taster strip that's going to appear on the website. Is that right? That's the idea of it.
Absolutely right. So it's going to be a digital only teaser. It will probably appear in print at some point, but just for now, it's going to be once you click through. So it's no pressure, just selling the whole enterprise, So so here's his script, all printed off because I like to, as you can see, draw sort of alongside the script. But so it's 6 pages.
Called Branded.
Called Branded. And you'll once you read that, you'll kind of understand what that's about. And this is a Future Schlock teaser. So, you may remember something similarly named in 2000 AD. This is somewhat of that. This is much more in the spirit of those early 2000 ADs. Oh, yeah, something a little visceral and kind of off about it. Well, that's kind of what I've got here. And if you know anything about how I draw and the kinds of things I draw, the visceral stuff really appeals to me. And
I know
I think
I've made you draw stuff. I've forced you to draw a number of things similar. Should we chat a little bit about your craft? Because I know you've got now we are going to try and screen share again. We tried this with Ian, and hopefully we've just had a practice. We've had a practice run. So
shall I do that now?
Yeah, go on, Babes.
So what I've lined up is a few of the thumbnails from the Future Schlock branded story, which features Schlock himself. He's the character at the center of this, and he introduces this story. Hold on. Now it didn't come up. Now it's not working, Tony.
Try again, Babes. I think you were doing all right. I think you weren't were you sharing the right screen? Because I could certainly see my screen back with you. So
hold on. Okay. That's not the one we want. Can you see my screen now?
Not quite yet. It takes a second. I can see them in the reflections of your glasses. How's that?
It keeps. Hold on. Let me click the share screen, and I think I'm sharing it.
There we go. We're going well.
There we go. Okay. Excellent. So these are some of the thumbnails that I have worked up, and unlike how I've been doing it with you, Tony, where it was all completely traditional all the way through. Okay. I've actually sort of worked out how to do it digitally, digital thumbnails. So I've been trying to do a little bit more digital work. I am very old, and so this newfangled technology is something that I find a wee bit sort of daunting. So I've been trying to work a little bit more efficiently because God knows how long it takes me to do a page.
I love the shape of that page, man.
Yeah, so this is how I think through my panel process.
So is the panel layout something that Pat dictates to you, or does he tell a story and split it into panels? Does he suggest that sort of wheel shape, with the central spoke that's coming out from the central image? Or
no, so there are a couple things about Pat's script that I had to work around. One is there's a lot of dialogue, so you have to be very, very aware as you draw that there needs to be room for the dialogue. So this particular page, for example, it was a traditional 6-panel layout. What page are we on here? So he gives a little brief, he breaks it down into panels. He gives a brief description of each panel, and then he puts in the dialogue. Okay. So as anybody who's read, Pat knows the dialogue is kind of critical to the story. I mean, his dialogue's really good.
And I think Pat does occasionally tweak the dialogue post art, I think.
Right.
I think that's right from what he said to me before. Yeah.
I'm sure he does. One of the things I wanted to do with this, though, was at least respect the fact that there needs to be some breathing room for the dialogue. So for this particular page, which I believe is page 2 or 3, it's a story about an astronaut, Steve Mullen, who's in space. And part of the conceit is that in order to maintain the space mission, he has to engage in advertising that's broadcast back to Earth. And the main characters are Steve, who you can see here, an angry face. And in the center, there's the ship's artificial intelligence, which is
okay. Yeah, I was wondering why it was a slightly. It is a female. I was say.
So you can see, as you can see here in the sort of the 4th panel, on the right here, that's Stella's face.
Man, good hands. You draw good hands, man. I always say that about you. Yeah,
thank you. You've got to have hands, as what's his name, son.
I keep thinking Kenny Everett, but it wasn't, was it? It was someone else.
No. Sure. It's going to come to me as you've got hands.
I know. Yeah.
So anyway, so there's everything's here. You can see these elves that are part of the advertising.
Okay.
Yeah. So it takes you a little bit through some of the pages. There's a scene out in space. There's page 1. There's Schlock there on the side.
And that's the spaceship we've got there. The
That's the
spaceship,
spaceship.
something we should talk about. The spaceship is
Yes.
because I remember saying to you, "Oh, you know, how you getting on?" And you said, "Well, I'm doing the evenings because I'm working harder work," and I was expecting you to say, "Oh, like, I've thumbnailed it out," and then you sent me this image of a fully realized spaceship that you drew.
Yes. So
Yeah.
so Pat contacted me shortly after he had sent along the script, and no, actually in between sending along the script, sending along kind of like his treatment and then sending along the script, which was a bit more fully realized. He asked me to do a spaceship. Sorry, excuse my cat. He asked me to do. I don't know if you can see. I had to do. He's very invested in my comic book work.
Yeah. He's a big fan.
The ship was something that people are going to see quite a lot of alongside these other incredible artists. It's actually really weird to see my stuff alongside people this talented. There's a double page spread, a bit of advertising that you'll be seeing shared from the Spacewarp. From Lisa, from Vince Hunt, who's the art director on this project.
Yeah,
a talented young man.
I've just told him he's next up for an interview. Yeah,
excellent, great, love Vince. And he did a bang up job on this double page advertising spread for Future Schlock. Just looks incredible. And this, this is my ship here. You'll actually, I don't know if you can see that a little better there.
That's great. I love that. Yeah.
So this was supposed to be.
There's a real pre-Star Wars feel to that, which I like. There's a real, I don't know, silent runnings, or even the first Alien, something like that. That sort of, it's almost like a biodome thing going on, isn't there, as part of it?
Yeah, that was exactly the sort of the effect that I was going for here.
Right. Oh, good.
So what I did was I worked up 3 ship designs for Pat to take a look at, Pat and Lisa to take a look at. One of them was sort of more of a 2001 kind of thing, because there's a very definite 2001 feel to this script for me.
Right, lovely.
With the AI and everything else. The second one was this one, and then there was a third one that was a lot more realistic in terms of kind of sort of an artificial gravity ring and some of the things you probably would actually see.
Yeah.
Actually come.
I love the fact you keep it simple. This is my sarcastic mode. I love the way you keep it simple. That's lovely, man. Even the solar panel stuff you've got going on there on the dome, and you can see. I always think a lot of spaceships, especially seeing sort of TV space opera. You think, how is there like 1 million people inside that? Because it looks so, but there you can see the floors and the structures and the buildings. Yeah, within that.
So one of the things that I'm just painfully anal about is trying to create things that look functional in the real world. So it's like I did actually stupidly when I did in the 3 ships, I had listed everything of function on the ship, like these little round things are fuel pods. There's engines at the back that you can't see on this one. This is a slightly smaller crop of the whole thing. So I'm sort of I'm a bit like I like to think through. I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks that you can have as a reader is if you're taken out of the story by getting hit with something just doesn't make sense. That you're either seeing it or you're reading it, or the panel layout doesn't work perfectly, or you need to smooth the reading experience for the reader. I think that's a very important part of the storytelling craft.
Especially with a Future Schlock, you have to be invested in it to find the payoff as shock. I think
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think So the flow of something like this is very important. I think, especially considering there's only 6 pages, so you've really got to just get to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good, man.
And if there's anything that Pat does just incredibly well, he just gets straight into a story. If you ever read any of his stories, he just has this art for getting right to it.
Yeah. That's got a real 2000 AD, even Crisis feel to the. I love the vertical panel on the left. I just really love that style of stuff. Like good stuff, man. That's great. So you're just doing a one-off at the moment. Is there a chance of any more? If we'll see from you in the future with this, I suspect there probably will be.
Yeah, I mean, if people like it, I'll definitely do more. For sure. I mean, and definitely anytime Pat wants me to do something, I will absolutely be make myself available to do it. I mean, this is what I know. He had auditions from some of the artists. And he
in the
netted,
sort of earlier stages, wasn't it? Yeah, and a lot of people applied.
A lot of people applied, and they're excellent. They really are.
Yeah,
and I did
a lot of good people. Yeah.
Oh my God! You know, I mean, he got the cream of the crop here, and so I did think about early on sort of auditioning,
right.
And was sort of intimidated by the fact that A, it's Pat Mills, and B, you know, you see people like Ian Ashcroft, you know, and you
or
think
Slightholme or someone like that,
or Gareth Slyholme, and you know, and I know Pat was sharing some of the early draft pictures that they were putting together, you know, and I thought, okay, I don't know if that's something I can really commit to, or I could really give my best to. And then Pat reached out to me, and when the great man comes to you and says, I want you to do this, then, you know, absolutely. Absolutely do that. Yeah.
And him and Lisa as such, they're a real machine around this. Yeah. The joy I get of seeing like things land in my inbox, because I'm sort of helping out with a few things on it. Things land in my inbox like almost constantly around this book, and it's just a joy to see it all, you know. But
it's one of those things where seeing the sausage is part of the joy of seeing it come together. You know, being involved in it, it's something, because I'm used to the final product, but this is something else.
You know that GIF of is it a GIF or a meme? I never know what it is, of Robert De Niro shaking his finger at someone and going "you." And when you say this is the sausage, I'm doing that now. Just you can't see me. It's, right. So where can people find you, dude? Where can we find you online? Where can people find examples of your marvelous art?
Okay, so always Twitter is a good place to find me, at CG Cumber, at CGCUMBER. Very unoriginal first initials and last name, and it's I know, right? Because I thought that through. Because then now, you know, I never knew I was going to go into comics and I should have had like a Cliff something
like Frank Quietly or something like cool. Yeah,
Jizz Knightley.
Yeah, I think that work with you. Fine.
Yeah. Okay. No, cool. That's it. This one's going to have an 18.
Good man. And good. And if you want to find out anything more about Spacewarp, please go to millsverse.com. Or you can follow Pat at Pat Mills Comics on Twitter, and there's always stuff going up about this at the moment. We're really into the last stages of it now, all getting very exciting. And if you check on the YouTube channel, have a scroll down. There's videos from all different artists and all different elements of this, and a couple where Pat talks through the process and what he's doing, and even the early stages of trying to find artists and going through artists' work and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting process. Thank you, Cliff.
You are very welcome. I
keep you baked cakes, and I shall see you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for interviewing me, and thanks to Pat for everything, and Lisa.
See you soon, man. Take care.
Take care.